crush it with Maizex canola. Maizex Seeds is 100% focused on Canadian farmers. Your source for high-performance grain, silage, and grazing corn, as well as soybeans and, new for 2026, canola. Visit Maizex.com to find your local Maizex representative.
We've got Pete Johnson joining us here on the line. Now, Pete, we're September 15th. It does feel very early, as you mentioned, but somewhat that's by design. Maybe not this early. I mean, obviously that's a reflection of the last half of the season. But tell for the people in the back, why do you plan for perhaps shorter season beans or getting them in early, getting them off the field early? Why is it so critical?
Oh, Lyndsey, I'm Wheat Pete. And so that says it all right there, right? So we like to plant our wheat early, and we grow shorter season soybeans so that we can plant wheat early. And this spring, we just happened to have the opportunity to plant soybeans at the end of April. We planted the soybeans on the 29th and 30th of April. We rarely plant April soybeans, but the fields were fit. The cornfields were not fit. So we said, yeah, we'll get the wheat in extra early. Of course, then it turned crappy this spring and was really intriguing because the beans that we planted on April the 29th had one really good warm day on April 30th before the weather turned mediocre. And it may, for the most part, was kind of cold and backward for the first 10 or so days. And the beans we planted on April 30th did not do as well, which goes back to this concept of you need that first 24 hours of good weather. Now, the first 24 hours on the April 30th beans were not horrible, or we would not have planted them like that. Forecast wasn't that bad, but it was really phenomenally interesting to me to just see that yield difference with one really good day. I forget the temperatures, but they were mid-20s, I think, something like that. And yeah, but fascinating on how that difference shook out.
Mm-hmm. Now, for other growers who maybe for whatever reason are gearing up to put wheat in the ground right now, which, to me seems like pretty exciting if you've got a window to be putting wheat in. What do they need to know? We've got relatively dry conditions here, Pete.
Relatively dry? In fact, we have not had a significant rain for quite some time. And I talked to a neighbor last night, and their comment was, well, this moisture profile to plant wheat into is going to be really interesting. And it is. And in some cases, we may have to plant wheat 3 inches deep. And I haven't really dug down yet to know for sure, but I do know that when we're in a dry period, it tends to stay dry. And if you can find moisture at up to 3 inches deep, lots of people will say, oh, Johnson, come on, that like our coleoptiles don't extend that far, and that wheat will never see the light of day. There are a few varieties, a few places which have coleoptile extension problems, but with the varieties we deal with kind of in the Great Lakes Basin, I've never seen an issue at 3 inches deep. I mean, the drills can't go deeper than 3 inches, and if I went deeper than 3 inches to find moisture, I think that's getting a little extreme. But certainly up to 2.5 or 3 inches deep, I'm going to moisture because it's warm, it's dry, that wheat is going to emerge quickly, and if I put it into moisture, it's going to emerge uniformly, and that will make it more uniform next spring so that I can do the best job with my fusarium fungicide, with my nitrogen timing, with all those things I need to worry about. Whereas if I plant in at an inch and half of it's in dry dirt and half of it gets moisture, that's an all bad scenario. I mean, it can fix if we get rain right away, but how would you predict that? So I'm a big believer that you plant to moisture if you can, up to 3 inches deep, because that's where you're going to get the most consistent wheat crop.
Now, that's all well and good, Pete, if you've got moisture at 3 inches. There have been scenarios, certainly out west with spring crops, which is a different beast, but there are areas where perhaps winter wheat is still in the rotation. We can talk about why in a moment, because there's definitely some good news stories out there. But I find it's harder. Okay, so what if there's no moisture at 3 inches? Do I just go the inch and a half and wait for rain? What's the call?
Yeah, 100%. You just plant it at an inch and a quarter, inch and a half, somewhere in that range. I mean, as long as the wheat seed is an inch or a little deeper than an inch, the root system is going to be as deep as it ever can be. And that's sort of what we want. So that inch to inch and a half is the sweet spot. And you put it in dry dirt. I've kind of gotten past this concept of wait because whenever I wait, I mean, it has been so dry, Lyndsey. Once it starts to rain, if Mother Nature decides, well, we've given you a really dry period, now we need to, get back to average rainfall for 2025. Oh my gosh, she's going to be wet, wet, wet. And Kevin in Essex will be saying, yeah, but Pete, we get those big rainstorms and now I got drowned out spots in my wheat. Well, I don't know, Kevin, I think whether you wait or you don't wait, if it's going to have water ponded in those low areas, you're still going to have drowned out spots in those low areas. So my call, Lyndsey, is plant the wheat into dry soil. The real question there, if I can plant 3 inches deep into moisture, I know what seeding rate to plant. Mm-hmm. If I'm planting an inch and a quarter into dust, what seeding rate do I plant? Because it's really the date of emergence that should predict my planting or my seeding rate, right, not the date that I seed that wheat crop. So that becomes a bigger question.
Right. Okay. So let's unpack that a little bit. And for anyone who listens to the word, I love how there's seasons, Pete. And on the word every Wednesday, we come back around to some of these key questions at every part in the season. And one of them is, of course, how do you choose your seeding rate based on conditions and calendar? And so this becomes one of those questions, because if it's early and conditions are good, I should plant fewer seeds per acre, right?
100%, because wheat tillers. Right. And if we can get it to tiller in the fall, that's maximum yield. But if we get too many tillers per square foot, if we plant ultra early and we stay at the 1.6 million seeds per acre, because that's what I always do. Well, now I got 1.6 million seeds per acre that instead of making 1 or 2 tillers per plant, they make 5 tillers per plant. And now my wheat is going to lodge 100%, almost guaranteed. Lodging becomes the issue. Plus we can get fall disease. And what we've learned is if we're going to seed well ahead of our optimum date, and everybody should know their optimum date. It's posted on the Go Crops website for wheat Pete. It is September the 25th. And so Pete's done soybeans, but he probably isn't going to plant wheat. If there's good moisture, I'm going to try to wait till the 18th of September if the weatherman doesn't have a bunch of rain in the forecast. Because if I can get within a week of my optimum date, that's typically maximum yield. But if I'm going to plant ultra early, I really got to cut that seeding rate back. So Steve Sickle tweeted out he was planting wheat. He's crazy early for his area there at Paris, and he was planting 800,000 seeds per acre, which is exactly right in terms of the seeding rate he should choose, because 800,000 versus 1.6 million, that means that seeds have to make at least one more tiller to get to the right number of seeds per head. And ultra early seeding, almost for sure, they're going to make at least that one extra tiller.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And of course, the reverse is true. The later we get, if you're perhaps trying for October 45th or something around those lines, we're bumping our seeding rates, right?
100%, man. If it gets to October 45th, I don't know if you can put too much wheat seed in the ground. You could easily go to 2.5 million and not be putting too much wheat seed in the ground.
Right. Okay. So it's timing, it's conditions, etc. So there you go. Okay. I do want to touch on, though, one thing that you mentioned, weed control. You didn't mention, and I want to talk about it now. It is very dry, but I don't know. At my farm, the weeds seem to like it just as much, so it's fine. If you do have this window potentially to get weed in at an excellent time, what's the weed control strategy? Do you go across first? Do you wait till it's up? If you've got time, what do you do?
So it depends entirely in terms of what weed species you have and how much disturbance. If you're going to do some tillage, you're saying, "Oh, it's dry. I'm gonna till it," which by the way gives away moisture, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
not advocating that at all. But if you are going to do tillage, you have to spray first. If you aren't going to do tillage, you can easily plant and come back before the wheat emerges. You just don't spray glyphosate on wheat that's even within a half an inch of the soil surface. So you have about a 3 or 4 day window after you plant the wheat to come back and spray after. Or the other option, Lyndsey, if you could predict, I would actually almost rather, for some weeds like Canada fleabane, wait till the wheat has emerged. And if it's sow thistle, no, you need to spray the sow thistle if you have the chance and you can see those rosettes, you don't have a lot of soybean residue, then spray before you drill the wheat because that's when you're going to get the maximum uptake on those little sow thistle rosettes or those Canada thistle rosettes. But if you're looking at weeds like Canada fleabane, they continue to emerge all fall long. So does dandelion. And so if I knew I could drive across the field when that wheat had 3 or 4 leaves this fall, I'm actually going to get more control on the fleabane and the dandelion rosettes with something like Infinity FX, or there's other herbicides as well. But you pick a herbicide that has good efficacy on fleabane, on dandelion, and you spray later because you will get more of those seedlings. We don't get much residual out of many of these products. So when you say when to weed control, it just depends entirely on what weed species you're targeting and just how much faith you have that you might be able to drive across that wheat field after the wheat is emerged, like letting more of those weeds emerge after that first rainfall. Because trust me, they are going to emerge after the first rainfall.